These guys are the guises. Baby worms and cocoons. They have been playing. There's a cocoon. All right, I spread the stuff off of the castings on top, which is full of cocoons and was full of baby worms. Let's see what they're doing. There's a worm. There's a worm. They're not very big. So, go like this, because this is where I put the pumpkin last time. And the pumpkin's gone. So if there was no worms in here...
Oh, there's tons.
The pumpkin would not be gone. The pumpkin is gone. And this is like just starting to hatch. And I keep putting more eggs and cocoons in here.
Hungry guys.
Keep these guys wet. When you want to hatch worms, they have to be wet. Keep them wet. Tons of coffee in there. They like coffee. They like paper. They like it all. Potatoes, a mushroom, and pumpkin. And we are going to give them more pumpkin than we did last week, because last week they ate it. And there's probably more little worms in here than one thinks. You just don't see them yet. They're the size of hairs when they start. Cover your foods up good so that the flies don't make a home there. And that is the guy's cocoons and babies. So, we'll switch over. Those are red wigglers. Oh. I have plants growing in here.
Uh-oh.
So these guys are my big guys. I have a feeling that's pumpkin seed. So they'll just eat it. Pull them out. These are my big guys. By the way, I throw Kleenex in. They'll be fine. There's not very many worms in here, but they're huge. If I'm thinking of the right ones. These should be my big guys. That pumpkin seed. Little worms. Maybe they actually started hatching. Look at this.
Lots.
Yeah, I'm having a brain fart here.
Who are they?
Exactly. Because it's not acting like the bin I'm thinking about. There's a lot of worms in here. These are my breeder bin. This is my breeder bin. Brooder bin. This is what this is. That's why it's so active. There's 3 months worth of worms in here. Like breeder bin worms in here. That's what's going on. Feed them well. They are hungry and active. And yes, you can use Kleenex. You can use any paper product. You can use whatever you got. And they will use it. There's a cocoon. Better put some more seeds in. Nothing's really growing in here. Bury your stuff. I'm going to put more bedding in here. Keep these guys wet. They're hatching, they're getting active. They love the moisture. All the bedding on top doesn't have to be wet, but the bedding that they are eating in and living in needs to be wet. Bedding on top will keep the flies away. Why is this thing being so weird? The food adds lots of moisture once it starts thawing also. So that's why we keep it covered so it doesn't just dry out. But the food eventually will just, like my big bin, you don't have to put too much moisture into it. I haven't put moisture into my first bin for a long time. them. So talking about breeder bin, this is my breeder bin for my red wigglers. Started out with about 100 worms in here. They have not increased that much because we keep taking their eggs away and putting them into the brooder bin. It's wet. The cardboard's dry. The insulation is wet. But it's not dry. You can feel some moisture in there. So, last time I gave them pumpkin right here. I gave them more than that. That's all that's left. Those guys are my breeders. They're all pretty much mature red wigglers. Might be the odd baby in there, but very few. And they are what that bin comes from. So we'll just give them some of this stuff because they already have some pumpkin. Ooh, pumpkin guts, they'll love that. Potato. There's only like 100 worms in here, so let's not go nuts. And I'm going to put another handful of bedding in with them. That just keeps the bugs out. Alrighty. Those guys are friends, moms and dads. These are the fats. These are my big guys that I said. There's not many worms, but they're big ones. If you're wondering what to do with your Amazon bags, bingo. Okay, so gave them some pumpkin last time. There it is. Baby worm. Compared to the size of the ones that are in here, that's a baby. But they're not really busy. There is a worm. That is a big worm.
Large.
I have no idea what they are. They are not. I thought they were European night crawlers. They might be, but my bin of European night crawlers that I just got for Christmas does not look anything like them. There's another one. They are huge. Good bait worms. There's another one. Now you would think they would start breeding in this. But they don't seem to be active breeders like red wigglers. Red wigglers are active breeders. These guys, I don't think you would get rich on selling bait worms, because if you sold 20 of them, we'd be out of worms. But I'm going to soak them down some more. Try to get them going. Maybe one of these times they'll actually start producing. I don't know. They're a different kind of worm. They showed up in my worms from Uncle Jim's when I bought my first worms. And I separated them out because they were huge. And now they seem to be just hanging out. I put some paper on this guy. And then helps keep them from drying out that much more. All right, here we go. The big guys. There's a few. The paper is disappearing. Oh, there's a few more there. These are mostly red wigglers as far as I know. I've pulled out all of the big worms. I mean, look at this. You know you got babies when your newspaper disappears. Dropped them. So I feed this bin on a wedge system, and a wedge means I feed at that end and the castings move this way, and I just took out a huge amount of castings. So the last time I was showing people that the worms push the big stuff up. See, they're getting into underneath the paper. The paper feels damp, not real wet, but just damp. So at this end is mostly more mature, and I just took out like this much last week of everything. This way was all castings, and then I pushed everything this way. So this was all mixed in. That is, they push it up. They push up big chunks of corn cob, whatever, big chunks that they're not utilizing the most. And it gives you a chance to sort it off down to your castings before you mix it all up. And you don't have to get too crazy about it. It just gives you that opportunity to take off some of the paper and stuff out of your castings so you can separate them faster. So we're gonna do a little fluff up, stir up, see how many worms we get in here. Oh look, there's a few worms. Worms like corners and edges. And they're everywhere. This is getting to be a very active bin, and this bin was made in March. It's now in November. So it's March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. It's 9 months old. You know what happens at 9 months, right? Things start getting noisy. Corn cob. I try to move the big stuff back as I'm grabbing it, because this will be the next stuff harvested, and the bin just keeps progressing along the way. There's some very small worms. Those are very baby. They're like, those would be probably 3 weeks old, my guess. I'm not quite a worm expert yet to tell how old they are, but they start out the size of hairs. Like these, when you get them to this size, they're probably getting to be a month old. So you'd say, why do you play with them so much? Why do you want to mix them up so much? Because things get packed and compacted. So you don't want it to become anaerobic. You want it to have air. And when we mix it up, we put air back in the system. So we move everything, smunch it up, get it tall, get it back in place. This stuff back here doesn't matter. It's you don't have to get too fussy about it. The worms will poop where they poop. So as I get back in here and I put my hand in here, I can feel that it's getting warmer. It's getting closer to the food source. And the food source, some of the stuff we feed will compost, start the composting process in a heat fashion. But the worms don't really bother because they can go this way and they can get away from it. They can go that way and they can get away from the heat. They don't. They self-regulate. If they want to be warmer on a cool night, they're warmer on a cool night. There is a cluster of little worms. And those are all probably 3 weeks old. They're funny. They seem to hatch in clusters and stay in clusters. I guess every cocoon maybe is up to 5 worms, right? Okay, so this is my turnip. I've had this turnip in this bin for a month. I can finally squish it almost all the way through. So break it up, give it more room, let it do its thing. And the only time you smell that is when you stir it up.
I can smell it now.
You think there might be some worms in this handful? And little ones. And they're on the old pumpkin. They love pumpkin. Look at that. There's probably 25 right there. So you see how I'm just keep pulling all of this towards my end, the end that I'm at. And I just get it up kind of to the level. We're going to move all this stuff ahead a little bit. Go down to the bottom, see what happens down there. Go to the edges, that's where the worms will be. Come in from the edges, and there they are. There's a bunch of them.
Wow.
Okay, so feed time. These guys are going to get a meal. And I do mean lots. We're just going to go like that. And then we're going to use this stuff, which is a mixture of bedding and coffee grounds. Well, which is their bedding. If you haven't figured it out, worms love coffee grounds. And we're going to go to the pumpkin. And boy, are they going to get pumpkin. Take that onion and put it down, because that's where you will get some smell, is if you got onion exposed to the air. So I've said this is a very active bin, so we're going to give them a very active bin feeding. So then we're going to take the old bedding, which is semi-damp. We're going to roll it on top of there. Make sure you put all your foodstuffs down, otherwise you're going to get bugs. You can see I got some food sticking out. Not a big deal, because guess what we're going to do? We're going to add more paper. And they're not going to go into that dry paper right away. And I don't care. Because what happens is this dry paper helps me control my moisture in my bin. So all that food that we put in there is creating a whole bunch of moisture when it thaws. Because it's all been frozen. So when it thaws, the cells have all been broken and the water comes out of it and goes into the bin. And you can get a real soggy mess real fast. But with adding this dry paper at that end, it absorbs that moisture, keeps the flies down. Chunk of onion, push it in, cover it up. And you will see when we come back that this end will shrink down and this end will shrink down a little bit. Where that food is will shrink down a lot. I feed these guys every week. So, everything feels nice and moist in here. You don't have to worry about adding too much moisture to this bin. It's wet down here, dry at that end. Food's in the middle. It'll be wet in the middle soon. Gets wet around the outside where the moisture condenses. The worms love it. Now we cover them back up. There's a baby. That guy's probably only about a week old. They come out white. And within a couple days they're pink. But that is not a fresh baby. It's a baby, but it's not a fresh baby. See if I can find you one. You will find the babies on the paper. They are paper addicts. That one's about probably two weeks old. They're very small, like the size of hairs when they start. You gotta remember, cocoon is like the size of a pen head, a ballpoint pen head. And 3 to 5, anywhere from 3 to 5 worms comes out of that. So they're very small.
Look at it.
Yep, that is one. That one's probably within a few days. And they love paper. I've said that a few times. But they love paper.
Oh, there's another one.
So, we're going to give them some paper.
There's a ton on here, Dad.
Hmm?
There's a ton of little babies.
Yeah, and I mean that one there is probably about 4 days old.
And then there's that one.
They start out even smaller than that. Those guys are already pink. They're a few days old. They grow fast. This guy here would probably be 2 to 3 weeks. Maybe a month. So we're just going to keep giving them some paper bedding to go on top because they love it. Finally found a good use for a Walmart flyer. There. Put the plastic back up, and you know what? They go back. They hang out in this plastic lots too. Here's a worm. Here's a cocoon. Right there.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to come up to the top to lay their cocoons either on the plastic or between the paper and the plastic, and they just, the moisture, I think, is what is the key, because the moisture content condenses against the plastic, and it's very moist and it's very wet there, so they find the atmosphere. Is that a seed?
Maybe.
This was the one at this end. But I think all that is worm casting. Worm poop. So I don't cover this very end up with plastic. I let it breathe a little bit because I want the worms to move this way. So I want them castings to dry up to the point where the worms are a little bit uncomfortable so that they move to where the food is. And they do. We just harvested worm castings out of here, so they're not going, we won't be harvesting worm castings now for another couple of weeks, and it'll be at this end, right about this far. So that concludes our feeding of the worms for November 12th, 2023.